Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 185 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 41 of A Storm of Swords. That's Jon 5.
You know what else this chapter is? If
No.
indulge in a quick aside here. Chapter 41 of A Storm of Swords happens to be the exact midway point of this book.
So we're 2.5 books into 5, right?
Yes. There's 80 chapters and a prologue and an epilogue. We are 41. So
right,
halfway, yeah. So anyway, as you know, probably we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and other interesting tidbits in this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing just fine. I'm curious what in the world you have written in Witty Banter. I wonder if this is new or if this was here from last time.
No, this is new, but actually I was going to do an aside to your aside, actually. Because
okay. Aside my aside.
When Carson was giving birth, and you were present for the birth of your children, right?
I was.
And you tried to help through the contractions, and they were painful and unpleasant.
Right.
For your wife. I'm not claiming any share of that. But interestingly, what I don't know if you had like birth plans and all these American things that people do.
That we did. They all went out the window when.
Correct.
When
exactly.
Started.
Nobody, including us, ever looked at that thing once. And it's like, get the baby out. That's the birth plan, you know?
Yeah.
But what Carson felt was the most helpful thing that I did was when she had a contraction. The contractions, I don't know if for those who haven't been present for the miracle of childbirth, one thing that happens is the contractions last 1 minute. They from end to end, they take 1 minute. It's very specific and very, and then they're separated by a certain amount of time, and that time gets shorter and shorter as you get towards the end game.
Yep.
But they always last about a minute. And so Carson had me time them and told her when we hit the 30-second point. Because she felt that from that point on, she was on the downhill slope.
Right.
And so even though the pain was intolerable, she knew it was going to get better from that point onwards.
Oh, a good psychological experiment there.
And honestly, it was the only useful thing I did in there.
More useful than me. I didn't do anything useful.
Did you cut the cord?
I did both times.
Yeah, on my birth plan it said I don't need to cut the cord.
Yeah,
but
well, when
they handed me a pair of scissors and were like, "Have at it."
Snip.
I was like, okay. That thing was kind of like, it was like, I've never done this, but it's like I imagine cutting through raw meat with a pair of scissors.
Yeah, I could see that. It was
kind
of a bit chewy.
Yeah, and I don't know if this was common, but I mean that thing is pumping with blood. Blood squirted from it and hit Carson's pillow just by her ear.
I don't recall this.
Yeah, well, you weren't there. I mean,
true. I don't recall this with me either.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's what you said.
The thing that one of the things I remember most vividly about Ethan's birth is that Stacy's mom and her grandmother were with us in the birth room, whatever it's called. And her grandmother was getting agitated, and she kept going into the bathroom and coming out of the bathroom and going in and out, and she was just trying to figure out a way to make herself like useful, but also sometimes she didn't want to be around everything that was happening. And at one point she was getting ready to go in, and we were getting toward the end, and one of the nurses, or several in there, stopped her and goes, in or out, you got to make a decision.
I like it. So the reason that came up in my mind was because we are now downhill slope to the end of the Storm of Swords. That's why this came up.
Yes, we're at the pinnacle. It's all downhill from here.
Exactly. So the thing in the witty banter is I was reading an interesting article in the newspaper this week about a cruise. Now, I've never been on a cruise, so I don't know if they're good, bad, or indifferent. But this is a cruise of a different a different blush. This
Yeah, I'd
cruise.
say based on what you have written
Uh
here.
huh. The cruise lasts 3 years. It includes 135 stops,
Wow.
and it costs $75,000. Which I was like, when I saw the price tag, I was like, oh my god! It's like it's crazy. And then I began to think about it, and I was like, you know what? That's not that bad
It's not
actually.
really if you're talking room and board and
Exactly, room and board,
everything.
and it's been converted from a cruise ship as they are now into a grown-ups cruise ship. So the kiddie playroom and the casino have been taken out. Instead, there are business centers where you can work from.
Okay.
And get this, you can sublet your room,
You can get off at a stop and be like,
get off and
I'll, I'll,
sublet it to someone else.
I'll
Yeah,
meet you 3 ports from now or something.
exactly. If you need a little break.
Yeah,
I was like, that's a really interesting thing.
it is.
Uh,
A either a couple, a childless couple, or a single person. You could be a good way to spend some time.
it said that the average age of the sign-ups thus far was like 58.
Okay,
So,
okay. So slightly older set. Sure,
yeah.
that's another
Yeah.
demographic there.
Yeah, I mean, we got to test out if we can still record from ship, but
Right.
no, I don't really have any interest. I just found the whole thing as a thought exercise. I was like, well, it's a really interesting thing that they're
Yeah.
offering.
Yeah, that is definitely a choice there. 3 years
Yeah,
touring the world.
yeah. Honestly, I have no interest really, but I do think perhaps they've priced it just a tiny bit low. I think they might have been able to do a little bit more. I don't know if there's higher rates for better rooms kind of thing. I don't know if
Oh,
that's the
that could be.
base rate. Yeah. I wasn't that interested, but I just found the whole thing sort of, it made an eyebrow kind of arc for a few
Right.
moments.
You thought,
Mm.
could we do that? Should we do that?
You got anything to beat my
I
cruise?
do not. Nothing is that I want to put on the show anyway has really happened in the past few days.
Did you go to a baseball game?
I did. I did. Yes. How did you
You
ever
you
know?
you put on your podcast voice for that response. I did.
I thought you were asking me for that
No.
purpose.
Well, I was, but then you kind of answered it just in your normal voice, and then you went, "Oh, wait, that's a story I can tell." How was it?
It was a
I didn't know
lot of
they.
fun.
It seemed terribly early in the year to be going to a baseball game.
Yeah, this was their. We went to Durham Bulls game, so this was like the third game of the season. So yes, it is terribly early to go to a Bulls
Yeah.
game, but the weather was fantastic. So
Nice,
yes,
nice.
yeah, it was a good time. We made it through the fifth inning before, everybody was.
Complaining began.
It was Ethan leading the charge because he had been out all weekend with a bunch of friends, and so he was too tired and he wanted to go home. But it's just so expensive to do things these days. I mean, we bought tickets to a minor league baseball game. We took 4 of us to pizza beforehand. 2 of us got ice cream. 1 got popcorn while we were at the game. The 4th got a
Yeah,
bottle of water.
I know you got ice cream.
You
I
know
you're one
I
of the
did.
two.
You better believe it. It was probably pushing $300 when all was said and done.
Ooh,
And
ooh.
we got our seats were like $17 a ticket. So it wasn't the tickets that was the problem. It was everything else.
That's a chunk of change right
Plus
there.
like $10 for parking or whatever. It just
Yeah, yeah.
so
Oof.
yeah, it's one of those things where stuff adds up quickly. Next thing you know, $300 and 5 innings of baseball.
For our anniversary, we did dinner and then we went for dessert at a different place, and that came to over $100, and I was having palpitations. I was like,
That's right. You guys had your wedding anniversary very recently. So did we
yeah.
discuss this on the
I
show?
think it might have got mentioned. We've recorded since, I believe, but
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
it was. I mean, a non-event apart from the huge expense, obviously.
Right. Everything is a huge expense these days.
All right, with all this whining, let's get down to business.
Yes.
How did we leave Jon Snow? Last time we saw Jon, he was successfully scaling the wall with Ygritte and most of the wildlings, 4 of whom, including Jarl, fell to their death. Ygritte cried in exhaustion at the top, but not because the climb was over, but because Mance never found the Horn of Winter to level this wall for the other wildlings. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
Okay. Well, Jon, Ygritte, and company are trekking through the gift south of the wall. Ygritte is amazed by the castles, in quotation marks, otherwise known as towers to the southern folk, in the abandoned villages. Jon explains that these are nothing. Some minor lordling would have thrown them up. As the Night's Watch dwindled, the towers and villages have been abandoned. It makes Jon long to show her Winterfell. She'd be happy to live in one of these minor towers after, but Jon can't imagine an after.
By the way, actually, when you were reading that and I was reading along, because I read the script, I don't watch your performance. I don't want to give you anxiety, so I read the script along with you. And where it says they're trekking through the gift south of the wall, for me, I couldn't help but think that it should say shop, the gift
Gift
shop of
shop
the
south
wall.
of the wall.
No, shop instead of south. That's what I was reading the word south as shop,
Gift
so it was the gift shop of the wall.
We had talked last week about whether the the wall should become a tourist attraction in Castle Black.
Exactly. There you go.
Raise some money.
So Ned Stark had a plan to repopulate the gift, but that had died with him. Jon blames the wildlings for the state of the place. Ygritte calls the abandoners cowards. He bridles about stealing from honest folk. She points out that the southerners put up the wall, and that robbed the free folk of the whole world. Kings claim stuff that isn't theirs. Thieves are brave enough to try and take it back. Kneelers only kneel.
Jon disputes the nature of the stealing. Silks, coins, swords are hardly being reappropriated to the rightful collective. Ygritte even defends the stealing of women. A man brave and smart enough to steal her would be a worthy father. Jon offers bad scenarios, but Ygritte would just kill the man, as would any wildling girl. Jon becomes more serious. The wildlings can't win. Ygritte hypes the wildlings' fighting prowess, but Jon's sure that the experience and organization of the Seven Kingdoms will prove too much. Jon makes a misstep when he says that all of you will die. Us, Ygritte corrects him. She's angry, worried that she's backed the wrong horse.
They come south to avoid any Night's Watch patrols, skirting occupied villages. The Magnar continues to quiz Jon on the Night's Watch. He lies as much as he can, but he knows this small band of Thenns might be enough to take Castle Black. It's not defended from the south, and is, to the best of Jon's knowledge, occupied only by boys and old men. He thinks of getting away and warning them, but worries for Ygritte. Would she be punished for his treachery?
A storm rolls in, and they find a derelict town.
Sounds familiar, Mackelly. Storm rolls in?
I swear we've recently heard about a storm rolling in the derelict town.
Tell me more.
Well, the scouts report an old man with a horse is occupying the inn. That too sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
They overpower him easily. Jon walks away. He knows they'll kill him. Jon and Ygritte survey a tower in the lake. Oh goodness, this really does sound like deja vu. He knows.
You're beginning to sound like an elementary school teacher at this point. Does this sound familiar, children?
Does this sound familiar? Jon knows this is Queen's Crown. Some of the Thenns thought they heard shouting from the tower. Ghosts, suggests Ygritte. Jon relates the same story of Queen Alysanne that Bran did to the Reeds. A Thenn interrupts. Jon is wanted.
Magnar wants Jon to execute the prisoner. The man is stoic, which doesn't help Jon. He'd rather he begged for mercy. Jon tries to rationalize that his not doing it won't save the man. Ygritte reminds him that he killed Orell sitting by a fire without hesitation. The Magnar calls him a crow, and Ygritte a crow wife. She won't take that, and she slits the prisoner's throat. The Magnar issues a new command, but a bolt of lightning and a flurry of fang and claw send everything into chaos. A direwolf starts to make mincemeat of the wildlings.
Jon first thinks it's Ghost, but he sees the gray fur. He knows it's now or never, and fights to get to the horse. He leaps aboard and rides off without any direction or purpose. When he's in the clear, he finds an arrow sticking out of his thigh. How'd that get there? He tends to his injury. He wonders if the direwolf could have been Rob's Grey Wind. And could the arrow have been Ygritte's? When he's cleaned the wound and rested, he remounts and heads north.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
So several mysteries from the last chapter, that was Brandon 3, have been cleared up. It was Jon and company. How exciting, a potential reunion, and then he rode off.
Yeah, not so good.
No. And the fear that Summer smelled was almost certainly that of the captured villager.
Yes.
That's what she would have been. That's what I always want to call Summer a she. I know Summer's a boy, but I want to call him a she. So please forgive me if I make that mistake.
Will do.
I will say though, given how stoic the man was, it's surprising he smelled so badly of fear, because he took his murder in his stride like it was a daily event.
Right. Yes,
Barely batted an eyelid.
I conjured a few backstories about the poor guy as I read through the chapter this week. And, because he's riding by himself, he's an older, as Jon puts it, an old man. And then he says around the age of 50. Okay, Jon.
Try not to dwell.
Right. It's all about perspective, I guess. Anyway, so several times while reading the chapter, I wondered, why was he out here by himself riding through this land? And, some of my conjectures were his family, they were coming from a northern village, and his family went ahead to Winterfell to weather out the winter, and he stayed behind to take care of some things, and now he was heading there to catch up with them. And another version of my head was he got word that his daughter had gone into labor, and he was trying to travel from his village to the next village where his daughter lives, to help with things. And, he's not going to show up. In none of those scenarios is he going to show up.
That's true. They're all very sad. Did you read the what's coming in the comparison with the TV show? Because the TV show, they did actually give the guy a backstory.
Oh, I did not read that yet.
Wait and find out. You'll
Yes.
You'll hear what at least the TV version had for this guy's backstory, which actually was quite compelling because it is a little bit weird. I mean, he's on his own in the fairly unpopulated Gift.
Right.
And it's a little bit strange. I mean, you'd think if he was there, he would have shelter, but he's obviously on the move between points A and B.
Right. Yes. Same thoughts I had. I really felt for him because likely they were going to find him anyway, because they were heading for that village, the wildling group. But the fire was basically setting up a flare to announce his presence before they came across him. And I thought that him being mounted, he might possibly escaped if both parties had surprised each other.
Right. Yeah. True.
If he had heard them trampling, somewhere in a nearby village, he could have hopped on his horse and ridden off, possibly.
I will say that one of these things is going to come up in pedantry, but 2 points there. One, he was quite careful with the fire. It was actually in the fireplace of the derelict which means that it would you couldn't see the fire directly. You could see the smoke coming out of the chimney, and you might see the red glow of the interior through the broken windows.
Yes.
So he was quite careful. You'd have to get pretty close before you even notice that. And the second one is he's sufficiently far south of the wall that he might think he's safe from wildling raiders.
Yeah, and Jon thinks that too. Jon thinks that, this is south of the wall. He compares it to Orell's and Ygrette's fire, in the Frostfangs, and he thinks, but that was in the wild Frostfangs. This is south of the wall. This man should have been protected by the Night's Watch and the power of Winterfell. And yet it wasn't.
I mean, that's entirely perspective, though. I mean, again, from Ygritte's perspective, Oral was just a guard duty for the wildlings to make sure that nothing befell that huge host of wildlings,
Right.
looking at which was full of women and children. Uh,
Right. Right.
this guy is a descendant of the people who built the wall to deny the wildlings the rest of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's all about perspective, like most things are. But it was pretty brutal and kind of unnecessary to ask Jon to kill an innocent man in cold blood to prove
You,
himself.
you're hitting on pedantry number 2.
Oh, okay.
So hold your horses there.
Well, I'd just say it goes directly against two things in his upbringing. Is that crossing your pedantry? I haven't looked.
No, I mean,
Okay.
you can say what you want about this. I mean,
Well, on one hand, it goes against his vow to protect the realms of men, his Night's Watch vow, as these are the men he's supposed to be protecting from the people that he's riding with. So very
right.
much goes against what he took a vow to do. But also, he thinks of Garrett's beheading when he's standing over this man. Garrett from the Night's Watch, from the prologue of Game of Thrones, he got beheaded in Bran 1 of A Game of Thrones. And, he thinks about that head rolling toward him, and then he thinks of his father, and he sees his father's face, and what he's being asked to do goes very much against him being Ned Stark's son. And like I said, the Starks are tasked with upholding law and order in the North, and here he is being asked to kill a fellow Northerner on behalf of the wildlings.
Two thoughts you've just conjured in my head there. One, scenario number 3 for who this guy is. He has been a recent visitor to Simon and Mackelly's haberdashery in Molestown, and
That's
he is
right.
fleeing south with his earned brown coat. The second one is, but as the son of Ned Stark, knowing this guy's going to die, looking him in the eye and doing it himself might be what Ned Stark would do.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
It's awful. I mean, for sure it's awful. But like Jon thinks himself, the guy's dead anyway,
He does. Yes. Yep. And that's
and
true.
thus it proves. So his giving himself away doesn't achieve anything really, apart from keeping his own conscience clear, I guess.
Right.
Jon's also agonizing about how to leave the group. He knows that if he abandons them, and he knows that he must abandon them, that they're all probably going to die. Because if he gets back to Castle Black and says, "Hey, there's a band of wildlings this side," then they shore up the defenses and they go looking for these people, and there's not a lot of hope for them. I mean, the gift is huge, and they're willing to travel very far south into it, but it's not. Their prospects become very dim if a band of wildling raiders are known to be south of the walls. They will be hunted mercilessly.
Yeah. Yeah. It certainly becomes dimmer. Jon thinks
Yeah.
if I don't get to Castle Black in enough time to warn them, it's going to be murder in their beds.
Right. But I was flipping it around. I mean, Ygritte and her crew are in big, big trouble if Jon
Yes.
gets to Castle Black.
Yes. I took your point. Yes. Yeah. I mean, being that Jon's on horseback, he certainly could get to Castle Black a lot faster.
Although he doesn't have a saddle. Now, I'm no expert at horse riding, but it's got to be a lot harder to go swiftly without
That
a
could be.
saddle.
I too know nothing about horseback riding. I actually
You
forgot about the fact that I did.
you have ridden a horse, so
I
you're one
have.
up on me.
Petey.
So, um, what's adding to this sort of like this agony for Jon is that he's come to know all these people. He knows their families, he knows their their hopes and fears, and so this. I mean, the poor guy, he's got to betray everyone. He
Oh
killed
yeah.
Corin Halfhand. He's had to betray all kinds of vows.
Yes, tough
Has to
spot.
has to sleep with this attractive redhead girl. It's a rough life, Jon.
The rough choices you have to make.
But the other thing is, I think, and I wrote this sentence which I'm going to read out now, and you'll see it. The Jon's a big softy, and
Right.
that fact is going to, however this goes, if Jon survives this, it's going to play with his conscience. It's going to be on his
Absolutely.
conscience forever. What he had to do, what he did, and the lives that were damaged or lost as a result of it is going to stay with him. And that made me think some of what Ned Stark does is hiding the fact that he's a soft and gentle soul as well.
Oh yes.
A lot of his rigorous sort of strictures are to protect himself from the conscience bite of doing the bad things that he has to do.
Oh yeah, there's been several times during Ned chapters when we brought up the fact that he also was a big softie, like letting the kids have their direwolves for one thing, and like letting Arya take her dance lessons with Syrio Forel. This is definitely making it harder. He doesn't want to get to know these people because it's just making it that much harder. It's humanizing the enemy. You know, he learns that this one boy named Court has a little brother who begged him not to go on this raiding, and that this Court is like 14 and has already stolen a wife and has a child on the way, and he learns all these details about these people that he knows he's going to have to betray, and who will, like as you put it, will likely die when he does betray them. So yeah, it's rough. He much rather probably just interact with the Thens who don't speak to him at all.
Right. So, I mean, obviously Jon is still a crow deep down. We know that. But he's got these feelings towards Ygritte that are incommensurate with that. And he's understandably doing some double think about the things that they'll do together afterwards. But it can't be. It can't be. He
Right.
can't, a wildling and a Night's Watch deserter do not have a happy life in store for them in the Seven Kingdoms.
Not really. No. And he thinks about how wild he's reminded in this chapter of how wild Ygritte is, and he thinks about just generally how different they are, and he kind of gets a sense of the possibly unbridgeable divides between the two of them, and her wildness, his Ned Stark upbringing, and it's just too much to bridge with just passion and good chemistry, which they clearly seem to have. And, he actually has this thought that it reminded him of the wall between their worlds. And I think that was said at both a metaphorical and a literal sense, because there literally is a wall between their worlds. But,
Yeah, and that barrier creates the difference where different mindsets can grow and flourish and not mix. Without that barrier, the wildlings and the northerners would be much more similar in their thinking.
Yes, right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And she conveniently corrects Jon's use of the word "you" in reference to the free folk, yet she called him "you" plenty of times in reference to the kneelers. You kneelers do this, you kneelers do that. And then she's like, when he says you, all you wildlings or free folk are going to die, she says, us, Jon, not you, us. You're one of us now. So.
And she does have a great line when he's having these discussions with her about and he's being reminded of how different she is. She's talking about how the fact that if a man was worthy enough to steal her, then he's worthy enough to be her husband. And if he doesn't prove worthy enough, she can always kill him and move on. And
right.
Jon was like, head explodes at this kind of thing. But she has a great line about a man can own a knife or a woman, but never both.
Right.
And which is, it's honestly, I think that's one of the most important lessons that is not taught at Casa Crasta.
It's certainly not.
He owns knives and has lots of women who don't know that particular lesson.
Yes.
But underlying that, there's a lot of patriarchal thinking underlying that. But at least wildling women like Ygritte have gained some level of self-determination. I mean, she's accepting the fact that women can be stolen, but then at the same time, she's owning the fact that she could unsteal herself.
Right. Yes. With a knife, I guess.
Yes,
one of the ways.
Quite.
Yes.
Quite. And Jon's final gambit to win Ygritte over to his POV is the almost unalloyed truth. The wildlings are going to lose. The Seven Kingdoms have a long practice at fighting each other in big battles. And the wildlings, no matter how brave they are, will ultimately fail.
Right.
Because they're outnumbered. They might win a battle or two, but eventually they're going to be outnumbered and out-marshaled.
Yeah, and I think his what he says to Ygritte here, there's two different points in his head. On one hand, he's thinking this 100-some force could very well take out the 400-some force in Castle Black, because what's left in Castle Black is stewards and builders and old men and young, barely trained boys, and these Thens are really skilled at fighting. But that's kind of just step one, of the whole process. At some point, the rest of the realm is going to push back
Yeah,
on
but
the free folk.
actually, now you've said that, it does mean. I mean, if they did do that, which they could win Castle Black. They could do something. They could open the gates for one, thus inviting the rest of the wildlings through, and secondly, they could break the gates in some way so that that door is open, and the Night's Watch would have trouble fixing it, so that there's at least a potential route through for the wildling army.
Oh yes, yes. If they take Castle Black, I think they could get the rest of their force through. But even derelict of duty Joffrey, or actually it would be Tywin, someone is going to mount a force to deal with them.
But they can't get the message in time to stop the wildling army. The wildling army is only a couple of weeks away.
True.
The nearest force of the magnitude required to hold back Castle Black is south of the Neck.
Right. Because even in the north, they're so depleted of
Exactly.
fighting men.
And leaderless.
Yes, right.
If Roose Bolton's bastard said, "Come on, let's go and fight at the wall," who's following him? But I mean, and there's some. I mean, there's some groups like the Karstarks who might head back, but again, they've still got the problem of getting through the Neck.
Right. Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's months before reinforcements can come. So, given all that, if the wildlings were aware of this force should attack Castle Black, should risk everything to take
Oh
Castle
yeah.
Black,
Right.
because it would be a huge win for them.
Yeah, maybe they could man all those castles that they keep seeing along the way and and the gift that they are so taken by. Yigrette asks Jon, "Do you want to go live? Maybe we could come back and live in this castle that she sees as really just a small tower." And she's thinking about after. She used the term after, and it was a little unclear after what exactly she was being, after they defeat Castle Black and open the gates for the wildlings. It's, I guess that's what she means by after, when the free folk are roaming freely south of the wall.
Yes.
But it may
perhaps a peace treaty has been signed between them.
Yes, maybe. Yes, it's going to be a little while before there's an after. But that makes Jon think about how he'd love to show her Winterfell, and all the things they could do in Winterfell. And then he thinks, but I'm a Snow, not a Stark, that Winterfell doesn't belong to me. But I was picturing Jon bringing Yigrette home to Winterfell for the first time, and Ned is still alive in my vision here, and that Jon comes into the Great Hall there to meet the family, and Kat gives Ned that disapproving look, so as to say, "Just like I figured, This is who your son brings home."
And Ned is like, "Jon, don't you know your parent?" Wait, no, I can't even tell you that.
But it also made me think that Jon doesn't know about the sacking of Winterfell.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
He's picturing Winterfell as it was.
and of course that goes to this sort of like the gamble of this wildling group. They might fear that if they take Castle Black, by the time the rest of the wildling army get here, 50,000 men from Winterfell arrive. But
Right.
that ain't gonna happen. Not gonna happen.
Yes, right. That's possibly why Jon says you can't win this, because he doesn't necessarily know the current landscape. He knows that Robb took a lot of people south, but he doesn't know just how dire it is.
One thing I'll say is that if you can get 150,000 people south of the wall, then you don't really have to fight at that point. Just pitch your tents and
right.
just, be belligerent,
Right.
Just tie yourself to trees. I mean, it's a fait accompli at that point. Unless the Northerners are willing to slaughter women and children wholesale.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because you can't. It's like putting toothpaste back in the bottle. You can't
Right.
push 150,000 people back through the gates at Castle
Exactly.
Black. You know.
Yeah. So
Although maybe this would have never happened if Ned and Benjen's plan to repopulate the gift with lords and knights had taken hold, but
what wouldn't have happened?
there would be more people in the north, although they probably would be south with Rob too. Now that I think about it,
That's a good point.
but the plan was to repopulate the gift to prevent wildling raiding, and I think as Jojen pointed out last chapter, there's what appears to be miles and miles of good land going to waste because of these wildling raidings, if that's why they left.
Yeah, and that's a question for me. If something doesn't ring true about all that, because obviously you you have farmers farming the gift to feed the Night's Watch, right?
Right.
And in return they get the land and they can feed themselves. So that's kind of their payment for this. All right, those farmers have to be protected by the Night's Watch from this. I mean, I don't know how often it happens, but it's an arduous task to get over that wall. It's not nothing. You wouldn't do it lightly.
Twice a week.
Twice a week is probably a stretch, right? So
Yes.
so the thing is, if as Jon accuses them, they're stealing gold and silks and steel, then depopulating the gift actually makes their raiding much less valuable.
Well, yeah. There's
They're,
that.
they're
There's
going to
that.
come and steal bushels of wheat and haul them back over the wall. I mean, we could just shoot a deer on the other side of the wall and save ourselves a lot of effort here.
They need the fiber.
Yeah.
All that red meat.
Yeah.
But of course, there's plenty of nobility around the north to create new landed knights or lords and set up proper defenses against the wildling raiders if they wanted to go that route. Unlike the Night's Watch, this setup would not be a rigid lifetime vow, so there should be plenty of second and third born sons of lords who would be willing to jump at the opportunity to have their own castle.
Side of that is you create targets for the
Yes.
wildlings to want to
Right.
come and raid from. So it's
And of course, Jon thinks he likely would have been a candidate to hold one of these
right,
towers,
yeah.
and that's
And
probably
then,
true.
And then he could have lived happily ever after with Ygritte.
With Yigrette, yeah. Think of the wild hares, how eager they were to prove themselves. Offer them station at say Jon's castle, and fortifications, and let them prove themselves against the occasional raiders, I guess.
I think the wild hares would have been too wild, though. I think that guy riding on his horse through this thing would have been attacked as a wildling by the wild hares.
Yeah.
He'd have been like, "I'm not a wildling."
Yeah, although Jon tells Yigrette, or maybe he just thinks it to us, I can't remember off the top of my head, but that the plan required giving back large parts of the gift, but the Night's Watch was okay as long as the taxes go to them. But that's what when I think he says this to Yigrette earlier, he's thinking about it, and he says that the new gift, villages and holdfasts, taxes rendered in labor and goods helped feed and clothe the Black Brothers. So that was happening anyway.
Yes, I mean that's the deal. Yeah, I mean it I think the point is the repopulation has to follow the same rules as before. You can farm this land, but we get our cut of it. We are the Night's Watch. The thing is,
Right.
of course, is that the thing about that is it's a chicken and egg. The Night's Watch has dwindled so much it doesn't need that much land farmed.
Right.
And so,
Yes.
yeah, it feels like it's in terminal decline. One thing I noticed was they mentioned that so Queen Alysanne slept in this tower, as we know. The battlements, the merlons at the top of the battlements of the tower were painted gold as a golden crown because the queen slept there. And I wondered if they did the same at Winterfell, where Cersei slept.
Yes, I'm sure they did.
Or perhaps scarlet ones where she slept with Jaime.
Oh, right. Yes. Two-toned.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or two if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
Jon continues to lie about the Night's Watch forces. And I've complained about this several times, but at least now on this side of the wall, he is arguably protecting his brothers from trouble. Because now he really does have a point in making Castle Black seem a more formidable foe than it actually is. I
Right.
would think the wildlings, though, courtesy of Mance Rayder, are all acutely aware that it isn't well defended from the southern side. There really is very little reason to defend it from the southern side, apart from this. And
Right.
this is a scenario that should have been considered.
Yes, we'll get into it at a later date, but there was reason behind why Castle Black doesn't have defenses on the southern side.
Oh, I think I remember, actually, yeah.
Yes, we'll get to that at some point. And so Jon he thinks about Ghost before he thinks he sees Ghost. And he divulges to us that he hasn't had a connection to Ghost since...
Or was it Be a Ghost?
Yes.
That's a callback there, kids. A couple of episodes ago.
Yeah, he hasn't had a connection to Ghost since he crossed the wall. And, that is something worth thinking about. Is it the distance causing it? We noticed that Arya hadn't had any wolf dreams until she got into the Riverlands, which happens to be the same area that Nymeria is in.
Yeah.
Or, could it be a magical element to the wall, that the wall doesn't allow the passage of such a connection? We know there's supposed to be spells built into the wall. Maybe it doesn't allow magical type connections to pass through it.
Ghost has got back to Castle Black, which is what he was instructed to do, then he would be on the south side of the wall by now.
True.
Just a thought.
Yes, that's true. I still hope Ghost is up to some Call of the Wild stuff, dominating a wild pack, siring some pups, just having the time of his life as he makes his way back to Castle Black.
So this chapter dovetails with the previous chapter, the Bran 3, and so we see what Bran and the Reeds were seeing from their wall, the rider in the village, followed by the people on foot in the village. That's the wildlings arriving. We know Hodor screamed at the lightning, and the Thens heard what they thought was shouting from the tower, but they'll probably forget about that now that they've been eaten by a direwolf.
They might, yes. You'd think that would fall to secondary issues. And Jon Snow just took off on a horse.
Right. All right, we're going to prioritize. Patch him up, chase Jon Snow. Do you hear a ghost in that tower?
Yeah, it's definitely best for those in the tower that they at least keep thinking that there are ghosts in the tower regardless, because they're less likely to try and figure out how to get to the tower if they think it was ghosts. Now, Jon almost ruins the whole thing by letting the cat out of the bag about the causeway.
True.
He was just about to explain, because he mentions we could just walk across the water, and Ygritte's like, are you out of your mind? Is this some sort of southern magic trick? And he starts to say no, explain that there's a causeway right as a big lightning strike hits the lake. And I thought maybe that was the old gods protecting the kids.
Very
to prevent
nice.
Jon from divulging about this causeway.
That lightning strike lit up the tower, which was golden, which is what he was trying to show her. So he broke off from what he was saying to say, see, you saw the crown?
Right, changed the subject entirely. And then the Thenn comes and takes him away. But I also wondered when Yigrette mentions that the Thenns heard noises coming from the castle, or coming from the tower. If Jon had heard it, if he had picked up on the Hodor and then saw a gray direwolf, if he might have put two and two together and think,
it's a decent question. So I have other questions actually. So answer me this: why did the cringing Summer suddenly attack the wildlings? I have a perspective answer, if you will, which is Summer was in serious danger here. There are a lot of wildlings. They're all armed. Several of them have bows and arrows. But he went to bat and started chewing on them because Jon Snow was in danger.
Right.
I'm not sure Summer would do that by himself, but with Bran was in there at the wheel.
Right. And we know at the end of the last Bran chapter, Bran was at the wheel.
Right. And if he saw Jon Snow and recognized him and saw the danger he was in, he'd be like, okay, Summer, time to let loose. Yeah.
Time we gotta move. Yes, I had the same thought. Summer conveniently attacked when Jon was in the most danger that he had been in. Now, the Magnar was speaking in the old tongue. So, I don't think that Bran knew what he was saying, but certainly you could guess Jon's in some danger
Right.
here. I need to help
Now,
him if he recognized Jon.
right. And of course, Summer might have recognized Jon. I mean, Summer
True.
is
Grew up.
brother to Ghost, and there's a connection
Right.
between these wolves and the children, and so
Right.
it's possible that Summer took this on himself. But then okay, so second question. So we don't know. It's either Summer or Bran or a combination of the two. But the Summer could track that horse, especially if it was Jon was losing globs of blood the whole way from his leg wound.
You would think that he would be.
So if Bran saw that, then they could go follow Jon,
Right.
perhaps.
Yeah. Now Jon's on horseback, so maybe Bran as Summer could track Jon down
Right,
and
right,
do like some Lassie type thing, like
right, exactly.
lead Jon
Yeah,
back to
yeah,
Bran. Would he
yeah.
go? Would he go? He's got two types of brothers in danger here. His Night's Watch brothers, who he needs to warn, and his little brother, who's traipsing around the north by himself with Hodor and some kids.
Tricky one. So of course, the tricky part of that is if Bran sends Summer to find Jon, and then even walks into him from a distance, he's like, okay, he's in some green farm-looking thing, some derelict villages. Yeah, great. Thanks, Summer.
Right. Really narrowed that down for me.
But anyway, I'm going to pin my hopes to a possible reunion here. I think it might happen. I think
Okay.
just still a chance.
I love reunions.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. All right, that's enough of that. Do you have some background for us? Did Queen Alysanne pop up again?
she did, didn't she? Yeah, so Jon brings up good Queen Alysanne gifting the new gift to the Night's Watch, like Bran mentioned last week. So let's look a little more in depth into how that all played out. Like I said last week, in 58 AC, the king and queen planned a royal procession through the north. Now, unlike Jon's version, where Alysanne grew bored while King Jaehaerys talked with Lord Alaric Stark, Archmaester Gildain wrote that she got bored while waiting for the king to arrive in Winterfell. Remember, we heard the story that the king got tied up at King's Landing, so Alysanne started the procession herself. Well, Bran also told us that Queen Alysanne admired the Night's Watch bravery, and that's why, when she reunited with Jaehaerys back in Winterfell, she convinced her husband to double the lands held by the Black Brothers in Brandon's gift. Well, Lord Alaric Stark might have warmed to good Queen Alysanne during her visit, but he wasn't warm on that idea. He didn't like that some of his bannermen would be forced to give up parts of their lands to the Night's Watch. Archmaester Gildain suggested that it was Alysanne who charmed him into the idea. However, Maester Yandel thinks the Starks were angered because they believed the Night's Watch would focus too much of their attention on the north side of the wall and neglect the lands of the new gift.
Ah,
Seems to be what happened, isn't it?
right. Yep.
Yandel wrote that the brother of a Lord Stark sought legal guidance from the maesters of the Citadel to avoid being forced to give up the lands of the new gift, but came away with no solution.
There you go.
So yes, it was always fun details in the histories.
So, comparison with the television show, this all happened. It's prefaced, as I promised, by the backstory of the Northerner.
Oh right.
The wildlings find the man. He's a horse breeder for the Night's Watch. So he's got like 8 horses at his place, and they run across a field to jump on him while he's sort of like pottering around his little hut. And Jon intentionally hits his sword against a stone halfway across the field so that the guy hears, sees, jumps on a horse, rides away, and hides in the village.
Okay.
They pursue.
Jon did his best.
Jon did all he could. Yes. They pursue him. Ygritte does notice that. Ygritte spots that in the TV show. She spots that he did it on purpose. The sword on the stone.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
To give the moment where Jon's faith is finally tested, he has to kill the guy. Some additional feeling. It was Oral, the warg, who instructed Jon to kill the man.
Oh, that'd be hard for him to do that in the book.
Being dead and all, yeah.
Yes.
Oral, had always been very skeptical of Jon's bona fides, and so this is why this sort of like brought this to a head. Ygritte kills the man with an arrow as opposed to slicing the throat. When Jon kills Oral in the ensuing fight, the latter's eagle comes down and attacks Jon, scratching his face. The dire wolves, plural, because both Shaggy Dog and Summer are present.
Oh, right.
Turn the fight at Bran's obvious prompting. We cut to Bran and we see that he's warging.
Okay.
So he is at least controlling Summer. And Shaggy Dog just fights for the heck of it. You know?
Right, yeah. Shaggy Dog doesn't need a reason.
Exactly. Jon is not wounded, apart from the eagle scratch, and escapes on horseback. Ygritte is left alone, basically, with Tormund. It's a much smaller group, so there's only a handful of them. I think maybe they're the only two left, actually, Ygritte and Tormund. Bran saw Jon through Summer's eyes, no question about it. Jon saw the direwolves, but he didn't necessarily recognize them. They're 5 times the size they were last time he saw them.
There's that. Yep.
So, yeah, very much captured.
Okay.
And also clear answer to some of our questions, at least in terms of the TV show.
How the TV show handled it anyway.
So Predatory Corner, as already mentioned, but asking Jon to kill an innocent man is a rough test of his loyalty. He might be an entirely fallen crow and still balk at murdering an innocent man. Right. And I think Jon could make that case. Look, I'm not a crow, but this is a countryman and entirely innocent. I'm not killing him. I won't stop you, but I'm not doing it. It just seems there's a big gulf between giving up your vows and actually being willing to commit cold-blooded murder. And I think Jon should have tried to make the case more than he did. Yeah,
Ygritte argued back that you killed Oral, who was just sitting by a fire.
He was fighting for his life then.
Right.
He's not fighting for his life here. This guy could go his merry way.
He was also following orders of, his superiors in that situation. He was a crow at the time.
Yeah. So, but of course, the flip side of that is Ygritte would say, our lives depend on this guy being dead. If he rides away.
Yeah, and Jon accepted the fact that man was dead. He just didn't want to be the one that swung the sword.
Yeah. The other thing is, either Bran and company have got their calculations wrong about where they are, or Jon and company have come an awfully long way south of the wall.
I had the same thought.
Oh my God. I've literally forgotten what this point of this excursion is. I mean, is it just to sort of like get disposition of troops this side of the wall? Are they just here for a summer vacation?
They're trying to get to Castle Black to take out the...
And they've taken a 75-mile south detour?
It's a long way. Now, they did it to avoid...
populated villages, right?
Yeah, running into any Night's Watch, groups that are out and about.
You know what they should have done was come a little bit south of the wall and try to go towards Castle Black and see if they met any resistance. If they didn't, they could just keep going. If they do, go further south.
Yes,
we know they're unlikely to meet very much resistance.
Right. There's not many people left to give resistance.
The occasional 12-year-old in a black cloak is not going to stop them.
Yes, 75 miles south seems a bit excessive.
Right. So news and notes.
So we just wanted to mention that recently we reached the 250,000 downloads.
I knew that was coming, but I forgot to look for it. That's awesome.
Yeah, since we started, and I'll just point out that in our first year, we started October 7th of 2019. So from then until October 7th of 2020, we had less than 10,000 downloads.
I see. Hockey stick.
The hockey stick. The snowball has been building.
And Just to mention that our Lord Paramount and Royal Kingsguard sustainers will have a live video chat with Mackelly and I the day that this particular episode goes live. So looking forward to that as always. We always have fun.
That we are, and that we do.
Come join us. All right, let's conclude. Jon is in the wind. A crisis allowed him to leave Ygritte without too much soul searching. At least
Yeah,
for now. They may reunite,
right.
of course, but will he get over her? I'm pretty confident she'll get over him. Uh, she
Yeah.
she might struggle more with the betrayal of the fact that he was always a crow than the dumping her.
Yeah, she certainly she seemed like she really was into him.
Yes, no question.
When they were arguing, she said, I'm yours and you're mine." Like it seemed like she really cared for him and really cherished their relationship. So it's going to be really hard, and the fact that he didn't just, like you said, he didn't just break up with her. Relationships, that happens in relationships most times. But he just, broke her trust, and now has very possibly going to put her in danger because she vouched for him.
Right, absolutely. That is a real worry for her.
Yeah, well, what kind of punishment will she face from Styr, the Magnar of Then, for Jon's betrayal? Will they think she's complicit, or just that she got caught up and backed the wrong horse, as she thinks in the chapter?
Yeah.
And then to take that to the next level, was it her arrow in his leg?
I'm going to suspect it was.
Yeah.
That's my guess. He tries to examine the feathers to figure it out, but he doesn't give a clear answer as far as I could see.
Yeah, I think she fletches her feathers with gray
Goose feathers.
arrows with gray feathers.
Yeah.
And others use white. So if I was him, I would hang on to that arrow until morning, wait till the light comes up and see what color those.
Let it dry out. Yeah.
Yeah, just because if it's gray, I don't know that necessarily means 100% it was hers, but it narrows it down that it could have been.
He actually thinks that whoever shot it was aiming for the horse, and he was lucky that it hit him.
Right.
Which is,
yeah.
I'm not sure I would share that thought, but there we are. And as we said, I mean, they've gone a long way south to get to Castle Black. Maybe, I mean, certainly they're gaining some intel as they go, but I mean, the intel they're gaining is, wow, there's nobody here.
Right. Yeah. Maybe
probably
we should cut back north.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, that's 75 miles. I mean, that's at least 5 days march,
Yeah.
And there's
on foot.
On foot, exactly. I mean, turn this around. There's urgency here. Get back.
Oh yeah, I bet they will now.
Oh yeah.
Now
Yeah.
Jon's gone north. Yeah. I guess you could argue that some of it is that they know not to get too close to the villages that are closest to the wall, because it sounds the alarm too early. But I mean, that is a long way in the wrong direction.
Where to next for Jon? Will he go back to Castle Black to report all he's heard? Obviously, he probably should do that because the Castle Black is in danger. Will he try to creep back and find out who the direwolf was? Did he have enough of a sighting of it to think, is that one of my brother's direwolves or sisters?
Right.
He probably wouldn't recognize it directly, but he knows there aren't that many direwolves south of the wall.
Right. I think way back in like Cat 1 of A Game of Thrones, she mentions that a direwolf hadn't been spotted in 200 years.
Right.
So
yeah, if you see a direwolf south of the wall, it's a Stark's direwolf.
It's very, very high probability of that.
Might he creep back to the wildlings and try and steal Ygritte away? Live out his...
She said that, if he does it craftily enough, she'll forgive him. Yeah, that's a rough one. He knew this was gonna likely be the the ultimate outcome of their relationship, but he was enjoying his relationship with her too much to cut it off. And like you said, it was almost helpful that it happened the way that it did, because he had to do a snap decision. He had to, he had to go, just hop on that horse and ride, or, he was going to die.
Right. I mean, it's a difficult moment, but when you're fighting for your life, you forget the other things.
Right.
Yeah. He's already forgotten about the shouting in the tower, that's for sure.
Right. And Jon paints a rather grim picture for Castle Black's hope of success against Deer's Thens. It is, on the surface level, it's a pretty bad situation for the brothers at Castle Black. They outnumber this group of steers here 400 to 100, but as Jon points out in the chapter, it's mostly stewards and.
But forewarned is forearmed, I mean, with that kind of numerical advantage and knowledge of the surprise attack, you'd fancy your chances, even with inexperienced people.
Right. And Jon being on horseback, regardless of a saddle or not, we're not sure exactly how that would hold him up. But if it does or not, he'll definitely he'll get there ahead of them, unless something very much goes wrong.
So I posed a question here. I said, has Jon learned anything worth the death of Qhorin Hearthhand? I will say that until this conversation, I would have said categorically no. But in actual fact, Jon might be about to save the Seven Kingdoms from the wildling army by getting back to Castle Black in time to save it.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Otherwise, his Qhorin died for nothing.
Yes.
Because Jon has learned nothing useful.
Yeah, just that they were looking for the Horn of Winter and didn't
find it. Yeah.
So, that's helpful that they know what they were looking for, but it would have been more helpful if he learned that they did find it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's still intel that they didn't. Yeah, you're right, though. I mean, so they're going to come, and if you hear them blowing a horn, it's just a horn.
It's just a regular war horn.
And did Bran see Jon through Summer's eyes?
Right.
That's
a good question.
Can they rendezvous somehow?
Yeah, maybe we'll find out in the next Bran chapter.
I mean, the thing is, for Bran, assuming Jon is headed to Castle Black, this hasn't actually changed much for Bran because he thought Jon was at Castle Black. He thought that's where he'd find him. He also thinks that's where he'll find his Uncle Benjen.
Right.
So,
yes, yeah.
So this sighting actually doesn't really change anything for Bran, really.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Where are we going next week, Mackelly?
We are going across the narrow sea to Essos.
Essos? Who
Do you remember there used to be this character named Daenerys Stormborn Targaryen? We're going to catch up with her.
I'll believe you. I'll have to get reacquainted. All right. As always, there's 3 ways that you could help us. You could leave us a positive review. You could buy merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com, or you could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal, or become a sustainer at the Lord Paramount or Knight of the Realm level, and enjoy the fun benefits that you get with those sustainer tiers.
And they are fun. You can also reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at @ghostharrenhal. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.